So thanks for everybody again for coming. It seems to have already been a very, very productive day today. And I'm going to just try and lead us into a further discussion session by telling you a bit more about what BioMed Central has been up to in the last year and how we see the future of BioMed Central and open access evolving. So I want to talk a little bit about growth of our existing journals and adding to those journals and building the portfolio. Deborah's told you a bit about that already. We'll be going over 100,000 articles published by the end of this year, and that we have an existing portfolio of 215 BioMed Central journals, and those existing titles on average have been consistently growing in terms of the amount they publish by around 20% per year. But we're also very much, there's a growth in the new launches and the acquisitions of existing titles, which is also helping to build the growth of the open access publishing activity at BioMed Central even more quickly. Last year we launched and published the first article in 11 titles. I believe we've already launched more than that this year, and overall there'll be more than 20 new journals added to the portfolio over the course of 2011. And as part of supporting that, the changes which Deborah introduced in terms of restructuring the responsibilities within editorial and putting many more people into the journal development roles, I think it's very, very important, because we know that a series of journals, this many journals, they need support, they need help. We talked about the journal life cycle and how journals can evolve and improve and grow successfully by the right type of help and support through that life cycle. So I think those changes, which have really come into effect this year, are really important as a foundation for the future growth and success of the journals. I also want to call attention to how much benefit there can be for existing titles as we do strengthen BioMed Central's portfolio. We've got one example of this in a field which until 2005 we really had very little in, which is veterinary research. And so, as you can see, back in 2005 we launched in the BMC series, BMC Veterinary Research, and around the same time an existing title, Active Veterinary Scandinavia, came to BioMed Central. And so those journals have been with us and have been developing and improving and publishing more and more articles. And then this year, two more established titles in particular, a very established and successful title from France, Veterinary Research, joined the portfolio, and also the Irish Veterinary Journal. Michael's here today from that journal. And what's interesting is you might expect, or you might be concerned, that there could be any sort of negative effect from those additional titles on the existing BioMed Central journals, but we've seen quite the reverse. So this is the total number of articles submitted to BioMed Central, those two existing titles I mentioned. And as you can see, the first 4 months of 2011, which I've projected linearly forwards for the rest of the year, show really substantial growth and record numbers coming into both journals in parallel to the launch of those other two veterinary research journals. So we really feel that establishing real strength in particular areas within biomedicine and becoming the place for people to publish can really help journals. So we have existing strengths in genomics, in public health, in infectious disease, and we're really seeing that we can build on those strengths. And we want to sort of establish these kind of strongholds in other areas as well. And so veterinary research looks like a very promising area, and we're hoping potentially to build on that, for example, by running a conference in partnership with our journal editors as well. I also wanted to talk a little bit about impact factors. Obviously, it was great to have a representative from Thomson Reuters talking to us earlier. There are many kind of different issues, but ultimately, as we do successfully take our journals through the life cycle and they get tracked by Thomson Reuters, it's a huge driver of success and growth for the journals. And it's one of the areas where, as a publisher, we can provide advice and we do try to help journal editors. So I wanted to give you an example of, or show you how things are progressing. This is the number of journals at BioMed Central which have official impact factors, and they get these both by being added and tracked by Thomson Reuters in the first place, but we're also acquiring more and more journals coming to us that already have existing impact factors. So you can see at the moment we have just over, or just getting towards 80 official impact factors, but next year, or sorry, rather next month, we will get the next set of impact factors. We'll go over 100 journals with impact factors. It's a really sort of major milestone for BioMed Central in terms of building out a reputation for the journals. So there's 23 of those first impact factors expected in June. Also, in terms of continuing to feed the pipeline of new journals that will be tracked and get impact factors, even in the last month or two, these are 5 journals including we have the editors here today from Diabetology Metabolic Syndrome, which have been added for tracking. And we continue to work. There are dozens of journals currently in the evaluation stage with Thomson Reuters. This is the full list, in fact, of all the journals which will get their first impact factors in June. And it's really important, again, that we and editors are really planning ahead of that work and making sure we're ready for it. We do a lot of marketing on the back of these new impact factors, and we can expect major increases in the number of submissions, but it's something that's important not to be taken by surprise by. We know that commonly any kind of half-decent impact factor will lead to a doubling or even more of the number of manuscript submissions. And the good news is that in terms of the systems for handling manuscripts, handling either whether with the assistance in terms of the editorial office, work on journals where we do provide that assistance, or in terms of the handling of production, we've really adapted our systems to be much more scalable, and so we're confident that we can support this ongoing growth, even as the absolute numbers continue to get more and more impressive. There's another really kind of interesting thing we dug out this year, which is has the potential to make quite a bit of difference in terms of marketing the journals. We noticed that when we were getting the decisions from Thomson Reuters on our journals, they were always saying, well, we've added them to Web of Science, they're going to get impact factors. And if you looked at the small print, they were being added to Science Citation Index brackets expanded. And we queried this and asked if there was a significant difference between that and the Science Citation Index. And the initial response from Thomson Reuters is, well, there's no difference, it's just because it's a historical artifact, it's a legacy of what used to be print, and so it doesn't matter. But then we also were hearing from many authors that they, especially in certain countries like Korea, that they were being told they needed to publish in journals which were in the Science Citation Index, not the expanded version. So we queried again and looked at some examples, and it was clear that actually most of the journals in the Science Citation Index were very old established journals, but some new titles were being added, so it wasn't just a historical artifact. And eventually, we did actually get an acknowledgement from Thomson Reuters that yes, they were making of that discrimination, and therefore it was reasonable for us to put forward proposals for well-established journals that we felt should be in the Science Citation Index. And the initial outcome of that is we've already had these 9 titles accepted to be, in a sense, promoted into the main SCI. And there are many more decisions which are being evaluated. And we're going to now continue to push that to make sure as many of these journals as we can get into the SCI, and also to do geographically specific marketing. So because we now know these titles are accepted, we know that's important in Korea, we can really promote these titles and the fact that they're part of the SCI. And there are various other areas where there are listed journals that play an important role. So the Australian Research Council has just very recently published a ranking of journals, and we have many of our journals get either the A ranking or the B ranking in that list. And those are again important things for Australian researchers. So we're going to try and do our best to do geographic specific marketing to let people know publishing this journal it's an A ranked journal in that list.